So I know the title is probably going to upset or interest a lot of people when I state things like spirituality is a continuation story. So if you believe in spirituality and things like that, a higher power, architect, God, etc., or maybe you believe in multiple, right? And I'll get into that in a second, right? Because, well, where did spirituality start if you study history? Well, you have other things, but mainly Hinduism, right? And you have Brahma, Shiva, Kali, so on and so forth, right? Or if you do other stuff, then you have Buddhism that had Buddha, enlightenment, etc. Then it goes into Judaism, so on and so forth, which was another large one. Then you have Christianity, which plays off of Judaism and has some things of, well, Buddhism and Hinduism within it. I'll get to that in a second. But then you have the next one, which, if I remember correctly, is Islam, so on and so forth, with the Quran. And most people have been, well, preached fear to not read, correct, right? Why wouldn't they want you to read something that is well within your right to read? I mean, are they scared of something? What do they have to be scared of, right? So, I mean, if you read within the first couple chapters, you'd be like, holy crap, this is a continuation story. Maybe this homeboy really is a G. Maybe this homeboy was a little bit more something else than most people would tend to want to agree in the way it's portrayed, right? So let's get into it. So in Hinduism, they have certain teachings. You have Brahma, you have Shiva, so on and so forth, etc. And then Shiva and Kali were very closely together. And then, of course, Kali, if I remember correctly, was the chaos and the wrath. Then you have Buddhism, which teaches enlightenment, treating nature with respect along with others. And then they have Taoism, with plays off that. But then you get to Judaism, which starts getting into the Abraham Accords and Abraham and everything else that leads into Christianity with Jesus, God, and everything. You have the Old Testament, the New Testament with Jesus. And then from there, you have Islam. But let's back up, right? Because I had somebody say, meet me in the middle. If Christianity plays off of Judaism along with the others, and it leads into Islam, then it's in the middle, right? So if somebody says, meet me in the middle, are they trying to pull you back from something because they don't want to move forward, right? Now, some of you out there that may be Christian may get upset with this, but it's a form of spirituality, not religion. Remember that. Religion is man-made, spirituality is for all, right? This is why certain societies and groups accept everybody, because it's under spirituality. Others may deem it as only being one thing and giving it a strong label that they like to reinforce. But let's talk about history for a second. Before that, let me sip some body armor. Oh, so good. Anyways, if you haven't seen my shirt, it literally says sarcasm, because Avada Kedavra is illegal. And if my sister was here, we used to call her Hermione back in the day, she'd probably correct me on the enunciation and pronunciation of the word just like her. Trust me, if you know her, you'd know. But let's talk about it, right? So in the Old Testament with Moses and everything else, they said to put a red mark over the door. Well, how do I translate that to modern times? Is that like saying, okay, well, in order to identify yourself, I want you to carry a red iPhone, right? Instead of a red mark, carry a red iPhone, right? Or wear a shirt that says red, that says, remember everyone deployed, or something like that, right? Will that affect people? Would that tell them something, or would it be hidden in plain sight and they won't know what the hell's going on, right? And then, of course, Christians, as they grew, started getting prosecuted. So they had to speak in code, right? And one of the things that I appreciate from this, which I think most people overlook, is that when Christians were to communicate with each other, they would, draw a arch in the sand or wherever they were, and the other person had to, complete it. But looking back at Buddhism, Taoism, Sun Tzu, Art of War, JKD with Bruce Lee, etc., Hinduism, Kali, if you have been in Kali, you know, yes, the greeting. But in martial arts, you've seen this in TV shows, right? They take their foot, they bring it across, and they'll draw an arch, right? And then they take their fighting stance. Now, why would they do that there, mimicking something that was, also traditionally taught with Christianity and Christians alike to, make sure that they were speaking to another Christian? before they got prosecuted or murdered, right? And then, of course, people talk about, oh, Jew this, Jew that, blah, blah, blah. Well, if the Jewish people were set free by Moses and he did his job correctly, and in scripture it says that somebody contended for his body, he must have did something right so that the devil couldn't play scientist with his body and see how he did all these things, and someone else had to step in and said, no, you're not. Oh, but he did this. No. It's like today, right? Somebody says, oh, well, I heard this person did so-and-so. Give them a pill. Send them to the hospital. We'll figure it out. We'll straighten them out, so on and so forth. Let's send them to the devil or the serpent brotherhood, right? Why serpent brotherhood? Well, a catechist and Asclepius has serpents. They said serpents were symbols of knowledge, but the only way you obtain knowledge is through discovery, and the only way any scientist would discover something is through experimentation. Are you an experiment? I know I was. And I was one for a minute for a lot of individuals that wanted to, well, see what was going on, right? And then the moment that I spoke differently, because I sounded like a military drill instructor, or I came off as a New Yorker, or I sounded different, right? It's like my friend Wells that I told you the story about, along with a couple other people that were either homosexual or lesbian, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I heard stories while I was in the Marine Corps from them, because we accept everybody. I don't care who you sleep with. The question is, can you fight? Can you stand up? Can you follow rules? Can you make your bed? Can you clean your fucking room? Excuse my language. This is for educational purposes. But come on. Half the people that even run across either active or past active military personnel always see something different with them. Then they want to treat them different. Then they want to bitch, moan, and complain. Oh, well, they get disability. They get this. I should get this because of X, Y, and Z. You don't realize that they signed up to give away their life, right? Not gamble. Give away their life, listening to other people so that you guys can continue doing the stupid shit that you're doing back in the area in which they're protecting. And then when they get back, you want to experiment on them. You want to talk crap about them. You want to do stuff to them. You hate the fact that they got disabilities. You don't care about anything else that they saw, did, etc. You're what? Envious? Jealous? Green? Like the Wicked Witch? So you send your flying monkeys out like the Wicked Witch in Wizard of Oz? Until somebody stands up and puts that arc in the ground. Remember the movie Hook? With Robin Williams? What happened with Rufio when he got the sword, right? When Rufio handed over the sword and he stepped back, what did Peter Pan do, Robin Williams' character in the movie Hook? I know it's an old movie, but he took the short gold sword and he made an arc in the ground. And all the lost boys and girls came over to the other side and stood behind Pan. And then Rufio went over because, well, I don't know if you noticed, Rufio had red hair, like Raphael, who had a short temper or got hot, etc., very quickly. And he finally said, you are the Pan. And he believed him, right? They didn't give him a hard time for years on end because they needed to conduct surveillance and everything else and guess and continue to play games and play scientists, etc. They saw. They went from one thing to another. They believed, they had faith, they saw, they followed. Isn't that the pattern in spirituality? They see, they believed, they saw, again, they followed. Or they heard, they saw, they became believers and followed, right? Their faith was stronger, right? Least ye have little faith. So will you take the leap is the question, right? Will you take the first step, or will you come up with every excuse in the book? I thought I was doing something right. I didn't know they were going to go that far. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Laugh at my pain, bitch. That was Kevin Hart, right? Oh my God, pineapples, oh my God. Hey, Master Guns, why does your insignia look like a pineapple? It's a bursting bomb. Go to any Master Guns, I promise you, they'll say that. You can hand somebody a pineapple, they still won't get the freaking clue. Because, well, it might be an inside joke and they think that they know everything until they're informed. Weird, right? Now, just to tap onto the Quran briefly, because I read several different versions before I found another book somewhere else left in my room at one point. And it literally states that it appears as though Jesus died on the cross. It only appears as though Jesus died on the cross. Well, how do we put the puzzle pieces together then? Because in one book, it says that he did. In the other book, it says that he didn't. Let me help you. Or as the Count of Monte Cristo said or Edmond Dantes said in the Count of Monte Cristo, that was played by the gentleman that played in the movie Passion of Christ, that actually played Jesus, who I love, by the way. And if you ever seen Persons of Interest, mwah, chef's kiss. All right? But check this out. If you've ever seen the Book of Clarence that was put out by Jay-Z, right? A lot of people see him doing this and everything else, blah, 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 because there's someone always watching, right? So therefore, you should act as though you are always being watched, for you veterans out there that get told that. Now, let me ask you a question. If you saw the Book of Clarence, what was the statement that made everybody go, are you serious, right? What statement was it? For me, it was when he saw Jesus performing miracles and saying stuff and people following him and doing stuff. And instead of seeing what was going on, you know what his words were? You know how much money we could make with that? You know, if I said that, how many people would come in? You know how my bank would fill up? You know, they could put cash in my pocket with that shit? I'm sure he didn't say it like that, but I'm sure he did say it one way or another. Do you know how much money we can make with that? That's brilliant. And then he became a snake oil salesman. Oh, wait, the Serpent Brotherhood, right? The Asclepius, the Catechus, etc. Now, let me ask you a question. In the Bible, why didn't they prosecute him and take him forth after he was flipping tables and shouted, let's go, or whatever in church, in the temple, etc.? When he called everybody out, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, etc. You want to go? Let's go right now. He drew the arc in the sand, right? He took the sword and made it. You want to keep going? Cross this line. Since you want to say, put up boundaries and you want to keep crossing them, step across this boundary right here and find out. And then, of course, you got some curious people, but others knew. Nobody prosecuted him. But later on, as you continue reading, remember when Barabbas, the murderer, got off, the others prosecuted whom they claimed was Jesus. But what was so precise that leads up to the Book of Clarence giving a better understanding, and the Quran? The fact that people said it wasn't him. They didn't say that in the temple. They said that later. Why? Because if you watch the Book of Clarence, they put him on the spot and then something actually happens and then they put him on a cross. And of course, he's the one that says, why have you forsaken me? Do you not think if it was the real one, he would have said, thank you for sending me home and taking me back into your arms. Thank you for getting me away from all these people that are such a headache. Thank you for getting rid of all the bullshit like taxes, inflation, interest, and tariffs that we have to pay for, that nobody wants help with, that nobody wants to assist with, that nobody wants to come up with better ways of thinking. Then you read the Quran and it says it only appears as though Jesus died. Well, that's weird, but I thought Judas betrayed Jesus. See, it's interesting because in certain things, there's something called a cackle bladder. And they say that Judas hung himself. But nobody said if they found his body. They just say that he hung himself. And if you ever seen the movie Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., there's a part where a gentleman allegedly hangs himself, but he's actually got a contraption holding him so that he's not dead. Everybody was able to see him. He was able to play dead, but he wasn't dead. And then, of course, he comes back later and it looks like he rose from the dead. Maybe that was not a proxy, but a test, right? You got paid, right? Maybe he made a deal, right? I need you to go ahead and point this SOB out, right? And kiss his ass goodbye, which is why he gave him a kiss. Kiss his ass goodbye, right? Jesus rode in on a donkey, which is called an ass. So kiss his ass goodbye. Mwah. He betrayed, blah, blah, blah. Did he? Or did he get paid for pointing out the one that was impersonating? And then after everybody thought he died, got away and had enough money to leave. Silver was very valuable back then. Think about it. Now, what happens when somebody got put on the cross? Right? Because at the time it was Rome. Rome became the Vatican. Maybe someone struck a deal. I'll assist you in catching real criminals as long as I get protection. Seems to work out. I'm not causing no harm. That's what the real Jesus probably would have said, right? Not causing no harm. I'm actually helping people. I'm helping your community. I'm making people healthy again. I'm making people want to do stuff again. I'm improving your civilization so that it can grow and be better. Let's have an economic optimal decision, a win-win scenario. Hence, Judas, once he was safe and gone, later down the road, the con artist, and then the real one, peaced out. But I saw somebody, blah, blah, blah. Why do you think, and this is where I start to read even further, when apparently Jesus, came back and he showed the holes in his hands and everything. And he said, believe me now, Thomas, or Didymus at the time. TD, Didymus, Thomas, Didymus, whatever. Believe me now? Do you not see the holes in my wrists or hands? But if you study history, Romans used to put people on crucifixes at the entrance of every place that they conquered. That later on got replicated by Vlad the Impaler. Hence, what looks like a Russian puppet doll that they have a stick going up the rectum, etc., and they go like this, and the kid's going around, etc. It's like singing Ring Around the Rosie, but it's about the Black Plague. Like listening to Pirates of the Caribbean, and they got scared when they said they're singing. Why are they singing Ring Around the Rosie? Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Why are the children are singing? Why is it that they say it almost only appears as though someone died? And then why were they prosecuting people that said they were one thing, but another? Now, what's interesting is that I like, connecting pieces and creating my own opinion. For those of you who have been watching, this is for educational purposes, my own opinion on putting the puzzle pieces together, but to me it makes sense. And so, you have things like the Freemason logo along with history, but then of course you have Assassin's Creed and their logo, which loosely looks like the Freemasons logo. But what's interesting is that it's not a square and a compass. It's literally the letter A, which you would have seen in any Greek history books, but it was translated from the Greek. And then that arc, that curve at the bottom, the arc. Remember I told you the martial artists, they'll throw their leg out, they'll put the line in the sand. You want to cross boundaries? This is the last boundary you get to cross. The Assassin's Creed logo. You want to try to box me in? Well, then you have the Freemason logo, right? Because L7 creates a box, right? Compass square, right? Etc. Pulp Fiction, etc. Interesting when you start to look at it from a different point of view or perspective, unless you've already been informed. Kali is a martial art, fought with sticks and knives, also known as eskrima, which strongly mimics silat. Then you have Assassin's Creed, who fought with sticks and knives. I saw a documentary. It said that there was one group, and you guys should look this up. It was called the Sicari, right? They were assassins, just like Assassin's Creed. Then they had the movie called Sicario, which was about Spanish cartel assassins. Sicari, Sicario, Assassin's Creed, etc. What's the similarity there? Because the Sicari were from somewhere else. Sicario were Spanish. But then again, what books have you been reading? What things have you been paying attention to? Has anybody tried to silence you, tell you to stop, etc.? I think I introduced my shirt in the other video and this one, and I'm just going to point it out again. Remember, thou shalt not what? Sarcasm, because Avada Kedavra is illegal. But people want to play scientists and they keep going, hoping that there are no repercussions. And then when they find out that there are, They try to cover it up. They try to damage someone's reputation. They use defamation, slander, give them labels that don't even make sense with medical books. But you accept it because it's easy and you're lazy and you don't want to read, and you let them because you're comfortable where you are. You don't want to do better, but you want to be a part of the fun or have some fun for a short moment in time. And then you go back to your life with your what? With what? More or less? Or you got to have a really cool story and something to say, damaging and destroying the life of someone else or others. Think about it. Really think about it. You know, granted, I have no fucks, aka no frills, but then again, I went to the Marines, which is a department of the Navy, and I bank with Navy Federal, which also share the initials NF. The question is, can I trust you? Because, well, can I? Can others? Are you able to see with your ears and hear with your eyes? Artists can. Ask any musician, ask any painter. What do they hear and see when they look at the painting? When people say they're doing work under the table, why did they throw a sheet on the Last Supper? What was happening under the table? If it is or could be true of the things that I stated. And it's just been broken up into many puzzle pieces because, as someone once said, seek and thou shalt find. But most people don't even want to go for a 20-minute walk around the park for their health, and they'll be keyboard tough guys and talk about, oh, someone went like this and gave the bird. We were communicating, as Maverick once said. We were inverted, you know what I'm saying? They were inverted, so we had to be inverted. But if I'm looking up and you're looking down, then are we inverted? An optometrist might state as such or say so. Think about it. Till next time, my friends, I will talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you got anything out of it, subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you in the next video of Finding Freedom, which is an homage to, well, Fast and the Furious. Ask me questions about that. And, well, one of my favorite games, Final Fantasy. But then again, are we living in one? I'll leave that up to you. Till next time, my friends. Peace.